in Rathmines, Dublin. Rathmines, Dublin, the heart of the city's flatland. It's not a place that speaks of close-knit community, yet it's here in the local Catholic Church that the newly formed Irish branch of the community of Sant'Egidio is taking root. 3 times a week, the community comes together to meet and pray and to plan outreach to the poor and elderly. The fledgling Dublin group is part of a lay community founded in Rome, which now has a membership of 15,000 people worldwide. 3 founding principles or pillars define the community's special character and sense of mission.
The 3 pillars of the community are, first of all, the Word of God, the Gospel, the prayer. The second one is the service to the poor, which in Dublin is mostly with the elderly. And the third pillar is the fraternity, the sense of family, brotherhood, sisterhood, whatever. One of the things I've discovered most since I began to try to live with my friends in the community in this way is that it's just such a happy way to live. That really what's written in the Gospel is true, that it's in giving that you receive. Because I always had a sense in my life that I was looking for something else, always something else, no matter where I went. And now I just have a sense that I find a way that I want to live. I don't mean a self-satisfaction, because I think that if we really read the Gospel and we learn in the community that we can never be self-satisfied, that we always have to convert and change. But just to know that there's a path and a way to go with people, brothers and sisters who are going in the same direction, brings such a joy into your life that it's really, I really would like to share that with other people.
No one who believes in him will be condemned, but whoever refuses to believe is condemned already.
The community of Sant'Egidio was founded in Rome in 1968, amid student protests, growing consumerism, and Vatican II. A group of middle-class teenagers in high school, challenged by the highly visible poverty in Rome at that time, began searching for a means to express their Christianity in a practical way. They looked to the message of the Gospels. Drawn to the run-down Trastevere quarter of Rome, the little group took over the disused church of Sant'Egidio and, taking its name, began building a new model of community.
The community was born in a high school in Rome in 1968. A group of guys wanted to live in a real and authentic way. It wasn't just intellectual talk, but a genuine commitment to the poor people of the townships.
In the late 1960s, Rome was surrounded by what we today call shanty towns, populated by over 500,000 Italians, mostly from the south and from Sicily. The young community of Sant'Egidio began its first outreach in these poor areas, teaching children to read and write. Now, nearly 30 years later, the Scuole Popolare, the schools of the people, still provide a vital service, as these areas grapple with growing drug problems, high unemployment, and racially divided populations. The community run after-school programs to complement the state system. Together with recreation and learning, the Scuole Popolare aim to model alternative values to those which most of these children experience in a culture of violence, addiction, and petty crime.
Noi alla scuola popolare insegniamo ai bambini la cultura dell'amicizia.
In the Scuola Popolare, we teach children the culture of friendship. You can see it's not only for Italian children. Some of the local kids are very difficult and bad at school, but this is also for gypsy children. This is the Scuola Popolare classroom for Gypsy children. And the first thing that all the children learn here is to have respect and to understand each other. They learn to appreciate the grown-up point of view, and it's also an open door to the wider world. Scuola Popolare teaches a new culture of being together, celebrating together and helping each other, and being sensitive to the needs of weak people. It's not easy to learn this on the street or from TV.
La comunità è una comunità laica, una comunità di laici.
The community is a lay community. For us, this word has a very literal meaning. It's about being a social community. We learned a lot about being community from St. Francis of Assisi. He was a layman, a deacon who sang the gospel in the liturgy. We learned from him that every one of us can live the gospel and still get on with living our lives, because he showed us a new way of lay people being together. St. Francis and Chiara showed us that friendship is possible between men and women, and yet everyone finds in their own space their own way to understand the gospel.
Each evening, the community meets for prayer. The service centres around scripture and reflection. Lay people coming together into communities like Sant'Egidio are now an important development in the Catholic Church, at a time when vocations and traditional religiosity are in decline. The Sant'Egidio community evolved out of an urban context as a spontaneous expression of the call to live a life based on the gospel. The story of its foundation gives it a special relevance to modern life and is the source of inspiration to Christians all over the world. A Christ without arms, rescued from a broken crucifix found in a rubbish dump, is a centerpiece in their church and the symbol of their work, to be the arms of Jesus in today's world.
I came to their liturgy in the evening, and I was completely unprepared for what happened. It was an experience that was, I think you would have to call it a profound experience. And I don't use that word lightly. The intensity of their liturgy, which was a real liturgy, it was really the work of the people, was almost frighteningly intense. And they used very Italian elements. They use icons and mostly Russian chant, 3-4-part Russian chant. They sing with an intensity and a sort of level of belief that cannot help but, I think, impress anyone who happened in on it. The center of the liturgy is the reading of the gospel and then a reflection on the gospel by one of the members of the community. And even though my Italian is extremely basic, the meaning of what they were doing comes across. You know, I would say, you know, Christianity first took root in Rome, in Trastevere, in the old port city of Trastevere. That's really where it really began. And if you've ever read the Acts of the Apostles, and you were to come on the same scene that I came on, I think you would feel that you had, and I think one really does come in contact again with the early church of the Acts of the Apostles. To spend time with the people of Sant'Egidio is almost as if you were spending time with Peter and Paul and Domitilla and Priscilla and Agatha and all those people that you read about in the Acts of the Apostles. These people are intensely real. They're doing what they're doing because they believe, not for any reasons of social convention or anything remotely like that. They have a sense of the physical elements of reality. There's nothing sort of, as we would say in the United States, a woo-woo spiritual about them, you know. They're very down to earth. They're very physical in an awful lot of ways. Their friendships are very physical, you know. They're very affectionate with one another. And it's it's quite sincere. It's obviously sincere.
Every time I come, I feel more at home here, and it's really a sense of being part of a big family.
Well, I think with the friendship that among ourselves, the friendship at home needs to grow stronger and to begin to reach out more. I mean, they have their service to so many people. They have service to the elderly, to the homeless, to the gypsies. You know, they just keep reaching out from themselves all the time.
They feed 15 or 1,600 people in Trastevere alone, and they don't do it on a bread line or a soup line or something like that. They actually sit people down and serve them. And it's done with immense graciousness, and the elements may be very simple, what they're serving. But it's done with this sort of sense of physical generosity that makes them extremely believable as a community. I mean, it really is the Word made flesh. It's the only way to say it.
Homelessness is a feature of modern city living. The way the Sant'Egidio community put friendship into the service is something noticed by the homeless people themselves.
I'm convinced after coming here for 2 or 3 years, they get friendship, they get understanding. I would call them kind of good Samaritans. And they also become friends because they don't just help us and then leave us and go away, but we make a kind of I call it a bridge between them and us, and we become good friends. In fact, Guillermo is a good friend of mine. I've been 22 years here in Rome, and I never knew his existence, but coming here to eat and have medical treatment and also sometimes clothes, I also got friendship from these people, and for me that's very important, because unfortunately the society outside doesn't exactly give a hand in the friendship side. It's not enough to give you 5,000 lira. That doesn't do anything. What we need is to be wanted.
Faliero is 91 years old. Every week he goes to the market with members of the community. The outing is as much a social event as a shopping expedition. Faliero was rescued from a large institution where he shared a room with 3 other elderly men. The community first made contact with him 3 years ago, made friends, and eventually managed to settle him in a family home. At present, he is visited by a member of the community each afternoon and evening. They talk, have a meal together, and most important for Faliero, they play cards. The community has befriended about 1,000 such elderly poor in Rome. Providing residential care for old people is a very new initiative in the community's outreach to the elderly poor. 12 old people live here. The residence is equipped with the necessary facilities and specialised care is provided round the clock. 30 members of the community work here voluntarily. The community has deliberately directed its energies to the most marginalised groups, the very old, the chronically ill, the psychiatric cases. It's difficult and demanding work.
I know that there is a romantic idea about the poor, most of all among those who do not meet them. An old man, an old woman whom you meet when she or he is in their ages. Maybe at the beginning it is an incredible experience of friendship and of gratitude. But maybe that the head goes away because the years go on. And the weaker they become, less poetical becomes. Sometimes it is a real time of proof, because sometimes they say terrible things against you. Then there is a minute in which you discover them that they are really like your sons. They were your brothers and they have been your grandfathers. But now they are maybe like children. And it is a complex relation, full of life, not poetical, very real, in which every day you have to change yourself to be by them, but in this way discover a terrific, larger range of experience and of life itself.
E Daniele ne mette la cipolla su tutto, così non le fa mangiare.
Responding in a Christian way to the needs of the times has involved the community in work with immigrants. Whether they're from Eastern Europe or Africa, community members help by teaching Italian, dealing with immigration issues, providing clothes, social services, job finding, even giving an address to people of no fixed abode. The shelter of the tent of Abraham is the scriptural metaphor used by the community. This biblical inspiration, the community dimension and the very practical service to others are the three interrelated elements that characterize and give meaning to the Sant'Egidio community.
The relationship is intimate. I mean, the relationship between friendship, service to the poor, and the Bible. They seem like three different things, but they are the same thing. It's a bit like the Trinity. I mean, if there is no friendship, there is no collaboration. Without friendship, the gospel message is in vain. Proclaiming the gospel turns individualistic people into friendly family. But this sense of family or community is not for one's own protection or security. It's something real for everyone and for the poor.
It's very old and it's very simple. You know, they're doing things that I think have been done over and over again whenever Christianity has renewed itself. I mean, they call themselves a Society of Friends. Well, it was the Quakers who first called themselves a Society of Friends in the 17th century. It's interesting how people, when they rediscover the gospel, rediscover the same vocabulary. But it's fresh for them. When they say it, they don't know anything about the Quakers. That's outside their experience. So for them, it's an original discovery, and it does seem very fresh. And yet it does have, there's this constant renewal of Christianity by people like the people of Sant'Egidio who rediscover the gospel just by reading it together.
In the very early days, back in the 60s, the community had a somewhat uneasy relationship with the official church. This is no longer the case, and in fact the Vatican has approved the community, giving it a status as a lay association of the faithful. Pope John Paul has further endorsed the community, encouraging it to expand on its activities. At a meeting in Assisi to promote world peace in 1986, the Pope spoke of the need to defend the message of peace. These words resonated deeply with the community, and they have now embarked on providing a forum for international peace brokerage. Sant'Egidio also plays host to an annual international Prayer for Peace conference, organized and run by the community members themselves.
Sant'Egidio was born as a community that put at its core the commitment to spread the gospel all over the world and to serve the poor, the causes of the poor. And we think that to serve peace is to serve the poor wherever they are, especially in troublesome countries like in Africa, for example, or in all over the world where some war is going on.
The Prayer for Peace conference has become an important diplomatic initiative. Hard issues of war and conflict are addressed by bringing together religious representatives. Where politicians may disagree, it's hoped that religious leaders may recognize their common bonds of faith. Through meetings, dialogue, and the fostering of friendships, the idea is to bring aggressors together in a spirit of prayer.
I can't remember a precise point in which Sant'Egidio decided now we try to begin peace brokers. It is on the road of friendship that we discovered ourselves involved more and more in special issues. For example, at the beginning of the 80s, we tried to help Christians in Lebanon who were besieged by the Druzi, by Jumblat, and organized some meetings in Rome, in Sant'Egidio, and obtained that this siege was kept away, or some intervention for freeing some hostages in difficult situations. So it was normal that Sant'Egidio was a free space for dialogue and for trying to solve problems of our friends. One of these friends was a Mozambican priest who became a Mozambican bishop. And Mozambique became one of the most terrible wars in our time, almost 1 million people dead, 16 years of war. And then we proposed the method of John the 23rd. Let's put away what divides, and let's start from what unites. And they loved this as a diplomatic method. And we started the real mediation for Mozambique, which became official and public.
The community of Sant'Egidio successfully brokered a peace settlement in Mozambique, and the community was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 1996. It also won an award for its mediation work in Guatemala. This is the very public side of its work for peace, but all of the delicate negotiations are carried out in secret. The list of world trouble spots addressed by the community is impressive and includes Northern Ireland, Algeria, former Yugoslavia, Albania, and the Middle East.
I think it's useful in very many ways. First of all, a gathering of religious leaders and representatives, above all from the three faiths of Abraham that have unfortunately led most of their history in internecine warfare rather than cooperating for the betterment of all humanity, and together with other religions from the Far East. Therefore, an international interreligious gathering, first of all, shatters stereotypes, breaks down barriers, creates new perceptions for people, new ways of thinking, and enables us really to recognize the image of God in the other human person, regardless of race, color, creed, or origin. And therefore, as a first step in facilitating coexistence and cooperation, it in itself is extremely important.
We call it the weak strength of prayer. It is weak, but it is nevertheless a strength. And it can change a lot. So we think that by praying and by being sometimes creative, by small means, the means of explaining and understanding the different reasons of everybody, because even in the worst wars, even the worst sometimes are right on some issues. There is not the white and black. So we try to understand, not to justify, and we try to create chances of meeting. Sometimes this becomes effective, and in any case, this is the only way out. For going out from the war without violence.
Well, you know that the community did not start out for the purpose of working in interfaith relations, and I think that that is a very healthy direction of when your recognition of the other is born out of your own rootedness and your own faith and commitment. I think very often people who work in a field of international understanding are very often not deeply rooted within their tradition, and that doesn't therefore make for creative cooperation. And very often those who are most rooted are rather insular and caught up within their own tradition. So there's a very special role for Sant'Egidio as a deeply rooted Catholic community that seeks to reach out to the other and gives an example and a testimony which others, I think, can be extremely enriched by.
I think that we cannot change the world in the same way in which Jesus Christ started to change it. We have not strong means. Jesus didn't change the world by power. He accepted to be crucified even if he didn't like it. He didn't want to be. But that was the only way to share all the suffering of the world, so that all those who are at the bottom of the world can find in him the great hope and also the real possibility of a friendship, of a brotherhood that brings them to the kingdom of God. So I think that that crucifix without arms we have in our small church is like a concrete synthesis of what we have to do to change the world, not by strong means, to try to be the arms of Jesus while he's on the cross. Nothing more and nothing less.